Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche organization with your daily video update for April 18th, 2025. It's a Friday, so I'm taking your questions. There are lots and lots of questions that came in this week. Some in response to my appearance on the SGT report, some related to the various activities of Helga Zepp-LaRouche, including her interview last week with Jack Matlock and this week with Chaz Freeman. But what stands out is the question that's coming in from so many of you is what's going on with Trump? Is Trump on the right side of history? Is Trump being controlled by the Zionist lobby, by neocons? And what's the possibility that there can be a solution to the crisis if Trump is not clear on what the role of the British is? So I'm going to take these questions up because they largely are centered around three hotspots right now: Ukraine, Iran, and China. And besides the danger of war, there's also the whole question of the tariff policy. So let's start with Ukraine. The biggest problem with Ukraine right now is Europe. The Europeans who have committed themselves fully to a rearmament, to providing weapons to Ukraine, reacting against Trump and the attempt to have normalized relations with Russia. Why are the Europeans so crazed, so committed to a war with Russia? Now, it certainly has nothing to do with democracy, because Ukraine is not a democracy. Ukraine is struggling to fight against corruption, but the problem is the corruption is at the top. And the corruption has been facilitated by the weapon flow into Ukraine and the money flow into Ukraine, led under the Biden administration, but being stopped by Trump. So what's the problem? Well, the European governments have weak economies, the governments are unpopular, and weak leaders, Starmer, Macron, and Merz as three of the most important. Macron and Starmer and their coalition of the willing is a joke. They're going to try and raise €1 trillion for defense when they don't even have the physical economy to build the weapons, and their armies are small. You know, this is an example of the highest level of foolishness. Are they willing to go to war with Russia when it's clear that Russia cannot be beaten in Ukraine? And now you have Merz, who's moving toward a suicidal position of providing the Taurus cruise missiles to Ukraine, knowing that it could make Germany a target of Russian counterstrikes. And the Russians have said it would not be limited to Germany, but to the whole of the NATO alliance. Now the question is, who's speaking for Trump right now in Ukraine? Steve Witkoff had a 4 or 5 hour meeting with Putin this last week. General Kellogg, who's generally considered by the Russians to be a bit of a whack job, came up with a proposal for a Berlin-style division of Ukraine, which is a non-starter. But the problem is you still have these proposals coming out which seem to be coming from Trump. Well, this is where it's important for Trump to clarify his commitment to ending this war, which means a meeting with Putin in the very, very near future. Now then, in Iran, very significant development this week with President Trump announcing that he is opposed to the Israeli idea of an attack on Iran. It seems that he's putting the brakes on Netanyahu. He's rejecting the Israeli plan to attack Iran, which would mean an Israeli-U.S. assault against Iran. Now there are negotiations underway, and it's important to note that the Russians are involved in this. Araghchi, the Iranian foreign minister, was just in Moscow. Russia and China are involved in talking with the United States about Iran. A peaceful agreement would be extremely important, especially because the Netanyahu regime is committed still to not just killing Palestinians, but driving them out of Israel. And you have the continued assault, the destruction of hospitals, the killing of children, and this is continuing at an escalated rate again. Now, the question is, who is Netanyahu acting for? He's targeting the BRICS countries, starting with Iran, but also Russia and China. Now, in the meantime, there's a shift in the U.S. population, as a growing number of Americans are saying they do not wish the United States to get involved in a war with Iran, especially on behalf of Israel. And meantime, the Trump administration is playing the anti-Semitic card by saying anyone who's opposed to Israeli aggression is anti-Semitic. Now, instead, the U.S. has to tell Israel, no more aid if you're going to continue killing the Palestinians. It's necessary to have a two-state solution, but more importantly, the two-state solution needs an economic deal which will provide incentives to both sides to have a peaceful resolution. And that's what LaRouche's Oasis Plan is all about. And this will be a central part of the discussion at our May 24th, 25th international conference in the New York City area. So there'll be a link to the registration for that conference in the description section. Now, on China, it looks like it's being portrayed as a standoff, that the tariffs are high on both sides. Neither side is going to back down. But what's the issue here? The deeper issue is that China has emphasized investment in its physical economy, science and technology to upgrade their industrial capability, increase productivity, and China's on a course for being the most important economic power in the world. Well, the United States is a heavily indebted nation. Its money is only made through financialization, that is speculation. What's necessary? Trump and Xi must talk, and the subject should be mutual beneficial cooperation on both sides. Now, the media is speculating about a faction fight going on in the Trump administration. Well, let's resolve this once and for all. The policy is no wars. The policy should be cooperation. The idea must be that you cannot back a country into a corner, especially a country that has a stronger physical economy than your own. So the neocons and the unipolar order types have to be told, take a hike, get out of here. We're going with cooperation. And that's the most crucial aspect of this crisis. The faction is not war versus no war. It's will we achieve the establishment of a new security and development architecture, which takes into consideration the benefit of all nations, as opposed to the idea that one nation or one bloc has the right to loot the rest of the world. Now, very significant in this question is news coming from Russia and Belarus, which has formed a kind of economic union. It was announced yesterday by Lukashenko, the president of Belarus, that they have appointed Sergei Glazyev, a longtime collaborator with the LaRouche movement, to be the general secretary of the Russia-Belarus Union. This is crucial. Glazyev is involved in the Eurasian Economic Cooperation Union, but most importantly, he has had a long-time relationship with Lyndon LaRouche, going back to his invitation to LaRouche to come to Russia in, I think it was 2007. In 2022, September 2022, during a celebration of the centennial of LaRouche's birth, Glazyev wrote a message to Helga Zepp-LaRouche praising Lyndon LaRouche as the most important economic thinker of the last 25 years. He wrote, LaRouche always looked decades ahead. And he spoke about the importance of physical economy in the American system versus the rentier Venetian imperial system, which was collapsing. And Glazyev, in this note to Helga Zepp-LaRouche, wrote, "We should not forget the creative legacy of Lyndon LaRouche and his emphasis on physical economy." Now, the fact that he has been appointed by Lukashenko, and Lukashenko said at the urging of Putin, means that the ideas of physical economy will be there with the BRICS and with the emergence, the potential emergence of this new development architecture. Physical economy, the key to peace and world development. And Glazyev ended his note to Helga Zepp-LaRouche by saying of LaRouche, "May his memory live forever." Now, I'll have a number of things in the description section which include the comments written by Glazyev about Lyndon LaRouche, the link to the webcast of the dialogue of Helga Zepp-LaRouche with Ambassador Chaz Freeman, which took place yesterday, and then a link for today's International Peace Coalition meeting with our friend Alex Kreiner as the main guest. Now, essentially, for those people who are worried, is there a faction fight? Who's in charge in the U.S.? We have to make sure that our ideas are out front and center. The idea of LaRouche's physical economy, the idea that you solve these wars not by having a series of ceasefires, but by moving to the point where cooperation is the basis for the relationship with other nations. Is that impossible? Well, only if you listen to the likes of Marco Rubio, the John Boltons, the Elliott Abrams, the neocons in the West, the Starmers and Macrons. There's a whole new potential emerging in the world, and that's the potential for a new paradigm with a new security and development architecture. For those of you who are excited about this, come out and work with us. Join us. This is a fight that can be won, but we need more people involved in it. So thanks for joining our programs during the week. We have more coming up. Keep your eye on the LaRouche Organization website. Sign up, subscribe, become a member, and I'll see you again next week.